So right now we're going to show you a female body that was found on the moon. And this came from Apollo 20, which was a very covert mission. And it was done between Americans and Russian astronauts. And this mission was the last known mission to the moon in terms of the American involvement of it. And this is the body that you're looking at right here. And you'll notice some things about the body is that you'll notice these tubes that are connected to her eyes and her mouth and to the center point of her head. These tubes are actually flying devices, and they are devices that are attached to the neurons of her mind, basically. They had a technology back then, a long time ago, where they were able to pilot things almost seemingly using their mind, but they were using technology that was attached to their mind to send out basically a particle ray to operate computers that would lift the ship into the air. And so basically that's what you're looking at are piloting devices that are attached to her face. And if you get a really good look at her, you'll notice her skin is very much in place. The people in the ancient world lived for a long, long time. That means that their skin texture was far more powerful than ours, meaning they didn't decay as quick as us. As they lived for thousands of years, it would also take thousands of years for them to decay. And so that's why her skin is still intact. Also, the fact that where she was, it was highly cold. She actually was frozen to death. So when you add that in there, it pretty much you can see why her skin is very much attached. And there's other things you'll notice about her. If you notice, the rims around her hair are quite curly, and you'll notice some of that there, and you'll notice some in the back shot. Basically, those are braids, and she had braided hair. And if you take a pretty good look at her, you'll notice that her facial features resemble someone of quite great beauty. She was known as a very beautiful woman in her time. She is also the pilot of this ship, and her body was the only one that was intact at the time when they found the other bodies. They found other bodies next to her, but they were in pieces. She was the only one that was intact. We got a very good look now at this implement right here. We can see a piece of this technology which is attached to the center of her head, and you can see how the tubes are all attached to the eyes and then attached all the way to the bottom. So what you're kind of wondering is that what she's doing is, let's say when she's piloting the ship, she's giving commands with her mouth. And those commands with her mouth are then being fed into the tubes into her brain. And what it is that there is a machine that is attached or can send a signal from that machine all the way into this device in her head, which would then send the commands to the ship, sort of like being on a cell phone and talking on that cell phone and powering the whole entire ship through it. Very advanced communicative technology. So advanced it makes a person look like they're psychic almost, but there's just technology. And that's a very good look at the device here and here. And this is just mind-blowing technology, just very mind-blowing. You got to really wrap your head around it. You know, here are more of the braids that are pretty much frozen. Her whole entire hair was frozen in, and you just really got to wrap your head around it. The people in the old world in the time of Noah lived in an advanced state of technology, and so the way they looked, the way things looked, are not what you would ever saw them as. There has been a lot of science fiction films, but the truth is so much of them are disinformation that they never really showed you the raw, real appearance, they knowing of what the old world used to look like. And if you notice how her mouth is in an expression of fear or kind of an expression of panic, it's because she was frozen to death. So apparently she was basically in a state of terror at the time she died. This is one of the astronauts trying to find a way to remove the tubes off of her face without damaging her face. He's trying to find a way in there. I want you to take a very good look at this note because it's very, very important. This is actually a piece of paper of the ancient language of the old world. This was the language that we used to speak a long time ago. This was the language that we had before the Tower of Babel, that incident that busted up all the languages of the earth. This note is written in cursive writing, and what you have up top of here, and this is from an analysis of the note. We have not been able to translate the note or figure out the components of the lettering. We have been able to figure out its vocal intention, however, and we have been able to figure out that it's a note styled after the type of notes that we see today. Basically, what you have up here is a name and a date. And what we have here is a very long explanation of something that we don't know. But vocal contention is that they spoke many, many words in a row. Like a sentence that we would break down is probably one long continuous sentence for them in the way they spoke. And that's about as far as I can get with that. This is about as far as any investigation has been into that. It's a combination of basically cursive writing that's similar to English cursive writing, and the letters are almost similar to English. So what we have here, is a more close-up look at what we're speaking on here. You notice that it's very cursive, but you notice how the sentences just continue to go on. And you notice it's more cursive here, design, but the sentences don't have a cutoff, they don't have a punctuation mark or a dot. They just continue to go on, and they continue to go on. Then you have a more type of high signia right here, and then it continues to go on. This is to show the kind of language they spoke, how they spoke continuous sentences. As we would stop or pause, they would continue to go. And their whole entire language was almost like a song. This is done in song. Songs do this. When a person sings a song, it's a continuous chorus. It's just going on, and you understand what the song is. Their language was similar to that. And it's just very fascinating. I wish I was able to tell you more. I wish I was able to translate the whole thing, but we no longer speak this language, and so that's why we're not able to. The paper is green, by the way, which is quite interesting. They factored different color paper back then, and this is black ink, by the way. And interesting tradition says that it was Enoch who came up with black ink, so that's kind of interesting. There would be people tell you they didn't have black ink back then. Well, tell that to this piece of paper. And so it's quite interesting. This is another note that was found on it. And the interesting thing that we found out with this note was that there was 3 people who signed off on it. Here, and here. All we know is that from analysis is that these could be names and a date, and another message here. And the funny thing is that these notes were found all throughout their bodies, or where their bodies were at. It's a sneaky suspicion that they were writing their last will and testament, and that's what these notes could have possibly been, because they're very eerily found where the bodies are, and they seem to have just been scattered, like something real bad was coming down on them, which was the effects of the flood. And one of the things people will observe in terms of what people do when they're about to die is usually they write things and they say goodbyes and stuff like that. For all this note writing, I guess they never thought to pray. They lost faith at that point. This is more of what I'm talking about. This is another note. So far you've seen 3 different notes so far, and this is another piece of note with the same deal. Just some long sporadic writing that we're seeing there. And what the astronauts did was they put all these notes in these Ziploc bags that you're looking at here. These white bags that you're seeing right here is the bags that they use to put the bodies in. And basically they're just sorting out the notes and filming it for NASA's viewing pleasure, basically. And but when you're looking at this, a lot of people look at that and go, what exactly is that? These are computer circuits, by the way. And these are actually very advanced computer circuits. These are circuits that have been attached to a blanket. I kid you not. And apparently this blanket was draped on the pilot, actually. This part right here is some of her lower body. And the covering was here, where her stomach is, and this right here was part of her leg. And for some reason, this covering was on half of her body. And it's believed that it may have something to do with, there's two theories on it. One is that the covering is some type of computer circuit board that's used for the ship. Another one is that it's an example of transhumanism technology, that this daughter of man, this specific female, had cybernetic implants in her, and one of that was this type of covering that was on her leg, which is telling us that the technology back then that they achieved in terms of cyborg technology was very real, and this is a piece of it that's on her. And much of the transhumanism doctrine that's coming out with the connection to what happened in Noah's time very much supports transhumanism rather than it being a device that's part of a piloting function. And it's mind-blowing technology, by the way. It's hard to know exactly what it did for her when it was attached to her. This is a more close-up shot of it as you're looking at it. It's hard to know what it exactly did for her. There's a lot of theories. It could have increased strength or speed. It could have done a lot of different functions like that. And those are usually the main functions, is to increase the strength of a human being by using cybernetic parts. And that's what all of this stuff is, basically. This is a more close-up shot of it. And it's mind-blowing. It's unlike any circuits that you've ever seen or known. These are circuits that are far more advanced than what you would ever known. Then they work far, far better than anything you can think of in terms of what we're dealing with now, or what the government will have you think that we're dealing with now. This is a more close-up shot of it to get you to really wrap your head around the circuit board of it. When you're looking on the surface of it, it almost feels like a smooth type of painting, almost, or a smooth type of paper, cardboard paper. But when you look further into it, you see that there's actual computer circuits inside of it. And these are the up-close shots of these circuits, and they're just basically coursing throughout her particular implement, and they're attached to her skin, by the way, and that's why the transhumanism technology makes far more sense, because it's very much attached to her actual person. And what you're seeing here is more parts of her body. This is a more up-close shot of her leg, and up-close shot of her body frame, to kind of give you an example of what happened to her skin, or close-up, more telescopic close-up look of her skin. And basically you can see how it's, it seems like instead of decaying, it's chipping. And so that's fascinating. The skin is very hard, and it looks like it's the type of skin that really would take a lot to even cut it. And so it's very strong skin. It's not, you can see how far humans have degenerated. We literally decay. We don't chip away. But back then they chipped away before they actually decayed. And fascinating. And what you're seeing here is her co-pilot, and the co-pilot's head was severed. And so what you're looking at here is the severed head that they found, and it was right next to her. This co-pilot didn't have the implements attached to her, and where she was found, actually, she was found a few, from what I understand, about 15 to 16 inches away from the pilot, and her head was found about 16 inches away, with her other body parts being found in pieces. One thing you got to understand, the astronauts' impression of it when they came onto the site of it, the Apollo 20 crew, was that they felt that a violent incident took place. at this time, because the body parts were in pieces, which hence that they were hacking at each other toward the end of it. The pilot seems to have been preserved for two reasons. She may have been the captain, and having privileged knowledge, she may have tried to get away while this was happening, and but basically wasn't able to escape. The meteorites that blew open onto the moon caused a freezing on the moon, that basically if anybody who didn't get taken out by the blast was going to get taken out by the freezing effect. She seemed to have survived the blasting effect, but got caught in the freezing effect, which happened pretty much simultaneously right after the blast. And that's as far as it's known. And what will eerily shock you is that a lot of old world technology that's found all have traces of a violent disturbance that had taken place on it, from having laser holes blasted into them, from bodies being found in pieces, and being found in suspicious ways, showing that they were in a state of panic and violence at the time that the flood effects were taking place. And so much of that is, you got to really wrap your head around that these people were living in a very violent society. This is an after shot of when they removed all the tubes off her face. Right now, they basically got her on Apollo 20, and so this shot right here was basically to show you the after shot of when they had it all removed. They had a female doctor who was with them as an astronaut, and she was the one who removed the tubings off her face. And key things to note is that when they removed the tubes off her face, they said that this ooze, this type of eerie ooze, was oozing out of her eyes and out of her nose. They believe that that might have been part of the cartilage of her brain and the flesh of her eye. That at the time when she died of the freezing effect, it affected the circuits, and that would have fried the inside of her organs in her brain and her optical eyeball. And so that was the oozing stuff that came out. And that's why they don't open up her eye, because there's nothing in there, basically. But we get a very good look at what she looked like. And we can see she was a very beautiful woman when she was alive. She has very voluptuous lips and all that stuff. She's gorgeous. A friend of mine kidded me and said that it looked like Angelina Jolie. But I disagree with that. She looks better than Angelina Jolie. But what we're looking at here is the natural mark that's upon her head. It's said that the daughters of Cain, or Canaanites, or people who descended from him, had deformities or specific marks that registered them as being Canaanites. And so this is what we're looking at up here. You'll notice that it's a cross formation, actually. You can see here and here, and so there would have been one here and down here. And there's a serpent form right here. And it is believed that this is the old world mark of the beast. And at that time, from what we understand, she was born with this mark. This is a mark that's actually born upon her. But there were some who were actually taking a mark, or a tattoo mark, that had two type of components. It was a digital chip that was tattooed into your skin. But much is believed that this is her natural, something she was born with, basically. And it's quite sad. What we're looking at here, if you want to know who she is a daughter of man, as was registered in Genesis, meaning she is a descendant of Cain, and she was a witch, and a old world pagan who was a advanced pilot, and she flew a mothership. And she is a member of the Rama Empire, because the ship that she was found in registered to have been part of that old world empire in terms of the technology that was found. And she was found intact, as you can see. You'll notice some damage here on her face, on her cheek here. And this is all chipping, by the way. Her face is starting to chip here. And you'll notice some of the kind of the chipping on her lips and things like that. And you notice just how well her face looks. You can tell that when she was alive, she was a radiant-looking woman, but she was also quite an evil woman. From what I understand about the Daughters of Men, they weren't the type of women you took home to mom, if you know what I mean. And this is pretty much the function. What he's doing here in terms of this flashlight, you'll notice that he's got this flashlight all over her. He's basically checking her skin out. He's basically checking for any abnormalities, anything that's out of the ordinary, anything that doesn't fit. He's trying to make sure everything is intact, everything is looking okay. You notice that he's putting this tube up her nose because before there was stuff draining out of her nose. So he's making sure the nose has been cleared out, and he's making sure everything's cleared. You see the stuff that he's taking? This is the type of stuff that was drooling out of her nose. This is actually tissues of her brain being pulled out of her nose. Says her death was pretty painful. And what we're looking at here is a very good picture of her, because now we get like a good front shot of basically what she would have looked like if she was alive. He's pulling more brain tissue out of her nose, and it's quite shocking. Noah spoke about these Pacific women. He said that these were the women that corrupted the sons of God, the human sons of God. They used to be married to some of them used to be married to fallen angels. I don't know if she specifically was, but I do know that she was one of those daughters of men who did corrupt sons of God. That I do know about her. And it's sad. It's a horrible reality to really wrap your mind around how much history has been stolen from you. That you would never ever know this, and that's totally sad. So now we're going to show you the image of the ship that was found. And first thing we want to talk about in terms of this image is that it's a very controversial image. And the first thing you got to understand is that this image is being brought to us by a very advanced telescope. And it was a telescope that was attached to the technology or the equipment of Apollo 20. It was an instrument that they had that was extremely advanced. And so basically we're looking at an image that's actually being looked at from basically thousands of miles into space. And basically they had a technology, much like a telescope. When you look at a telescope, the objects look smaller in the telescope. And so this is what we're seeing here. And they're actually seeing it through a computer screen as they're moving the telescope. And so with that understanding, that's the understanding you need to have as you're looking at this footage. And also you're going to notice there's a lot of static in this footage. That was actually done by NASA. And I'm going to tell you why you'll see that static. And if you take a very good look at it, at what they're looking at here, you'll notice how the ground is shiny. In fact, it's very, very shiny. In fact, it's shining yellow. And that's because there's a lot of gold. And when it starts to static up a lot, that's actually what they're trying to hide. They're trying to hide the fact of what they were really looking at and what they were really going after. They were going after gold, technology, resources. It's the same old man with the same old hang-ups, no matter who's ruling it. And so if you look onto this side right here, you'll start to notice some gold here, and you'll start seeing kind of strips of it all on the ground. But it starts to get more stronger around here, and then you start to see it. And what you got to notice about this round gold plate up here is the fact that if you were on the surface looking at it, it basically would look like a mountain of gold down on the surface where you would be at. That's a lot of gold, people. This area is Fort Knox right here. This one area right there, probably more so. And then look right here. There's another massive mountain of gold right here too. And that's just mind-blowing. I mean, there's gold on the moon, and a whole lot of it. And there's an area there that just has a big, massive mountain of gold. And that's what this whole area is. And that's why they're going over this very, very smoothly. And they're trying to get, first of all, they're trying to get a logistics for where to land, where to go, where to walk around, and basically what to pick up. And so where now they're basically scanning the area, and so that you can get a very good view of basically the surrounding and the terrain that they're in. And soon they're going to start to come across the mothership. And this mothership that you're about to see is the ship that the daughter of man, the female corpse, was found in. And she was a pilot of this specific ship. And the ship seems to have been in the hangar, or its hangar. The area, or this area that the ship was found around, is believed to have been some type of airport, basically a space-age airport, that was basically decimated and destroyed. And so if you're looking now, you see a lot of these meteor rocks, as you will, and they're all over the ground now. You see them here, and basically you see them everywhere. And these are not natural rock formations. This is the sign of a great devastation that took place in this area. These were the rocks that were shot out of the earth like meteors, and they scattered all over the moon to destroy it. And so that's what you're seeing, is these massive holes in the ground. And now you're seeing it all through here. You see these things starting to light up right here, here and here. This is more gold that's being found there, and it's all over the place. Now the static comes, and this is NASA. NASA's trying to now hide what they're trying to see. Now it's more gold, and not just gold that you're seeing here and here, but now you're starting to see the ship itself, which is right there in the hangar. And the more and more they get closer to it, they can start to see it. And you'll notice that the ship's main, which you would call the bridge, if you will, the screen that covers it, is made of gold as well. And that is a big, massive gold plate too. And you'll notice that now they're getting more closer into the ship, and now they're looking at it. And keep in mind also, like I said, telescope technology is what they're using. You're looking at a computer screen from their ship using a telescope machine. So they're actually telescoping this image from their ship onto their ship so they can get a look at it. So knowing that, to know that's important is because this thing is a lot bigger than you think. It's actually far bigger than Manhattan itself. That's how big this ship really is. So knowing that, the ground and everything else is far, far bigger. And so if you notice how these golden, massive nuggets, mountain nuggets, are shining off the ground, this is to show you how much is down there and how big this ship is. And if you notice where the ship is, you notice this big circular thing that's around it. That was part of the hangar that it was once in, but you also notice it's been destroyed too. And so right now he's basically looking at the nose of the ship, and he's trying to negotiate a way in. And so right now they're getting an outer look into it before they'll go into a more deeper telescope to get a more detailed look into it. So basically that's what they're trying to do. And then you notice these big holes that are right on top of it. Basically those holes came from the meteor impacts. And now, if you notice all this kind of crazy stuff that's like kind of going on with it, right when they get here, you notice how it's very shiny right here. It's basically glowing right there, glowing yellow. And then you notice how all that glowing stuff was going on, and now it's starting to get more and more shakier. Now the image is starting to fade out more. This is also a NASA trick too, and what they were doing was they were trying to cover up all the gold that was on that Pacific type of mountain area that was right above the hangar where the ship was. The ship was inside the hangar, and at the top portion of the ship, all along that land there, were just massive mountains, massive mountain nuggets of gold. And that's when it starts to get more and more static feed, because they didn't want you to see that. And it's quite shocking. There's also a lot of bright spots in this video that were very suspicious of entity activity that was going on. And from what we understand about that is that every Apollo mission was spied on by the fallen angels, so they haunted them and many times harassed them when they were doing their missions. And so you're noticing more of it. You see more of these kind of gold contentions here, and you see right there, right at these areas right here, they're just kind of scattered all through there, and it starts to get more and more foggier, but you start to catch it when you start to take a good look at it. And then right up here too, it's more and more glowing, a lot of yellow golding glow. All of that are basically massive gold pieces. And with the light, basically all that lighting, that red-blue lighting that keeps happening every time they focus the camera over there, that was NASA's effect on that, basically trying to cover up what the camera was catching. And so that's why it's basically glowing all those reflections. We want to thank you for watching our video, and we want to leave you with basically this important information about the footage that you just saw. This footage is very, very important because this is the footage that is going on in the world. This is the world that you don't see. These are the things that go on in this world that you've either been lied to about or the right information wasn't brought to you, and a lot of those things. We did these videos for two things. One, to show you that they're real, and also to explain it to you so that you can walk away with the proper information about what you're seeing. These entities are real. They are hyperdimensional beings who take many different shapes and forms. Our government has lied to us about them since they showed up, and every world power has dealt with them at one point or another.